two, one. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a different podcast. This is the shooting of episode 4. What's up, Lou? How we doing?
Good. Glad to have our first guest on.
Yes, sir. We have our first guest, the founder of Spencer's Heartstrong Foundation, a communication expert in the sense that he will be graduating with a communications degree here very, very soon. And Spencer, how you doing on the other side?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And we brought Spencer on as our first guest. He has a very unique story and something that we feel strongly about in previous podcasts. We've kind of gotten into some health things, not only mental health, but physical health as well. And Spencer, you can just take it and run with it. Tell your story, kind of fill the people in on, everything that's happened thus far and how you got this far with your foundation and everything like that.
Yeah, sounds good to me. So I'll give you the full loadout here. So I was 16, playing basketball, pretty healthy kid. You can call it a 3-sport athlete. I played golf in the fall, basketball in the winter, and baseball in the spring. So consider myself relatively healthy, worked out a few times a day. I was playing basketball one day, September 9th of 2012, so my sophomore year of high school. 5 minutes into our scrimmage, or open gym is what we called it. Started feeling really weak. I just went to my knees, and my best friend came and put his hand on my back. He's like, "Dude, you okay?" And I go, "No, man, like I'm going down. Like I feel bad." He's like, "What do you mean?" Then I went face first into the gym floor, and I collapsed, and I woke up about maybe 15 minutes later in the hospital. They told me my heart had stopped for 8 minutes. And so then they life-flighted me pretty quickly to Portland, where I got a bunch of tests, got a defibrillator put into my chest the second day I was in the hospital. And then they sent me on my way home about 5 days later. And here I am at almost 24 years old, perfectly healthy, and haven't had any issues since then.
Yeah, and so you were 16 when that happened, and you haven't had anything like that happen again since then?
No, I haven't. I got all the testing done that you could possibly do. They've had some, except for there's a test that they had talked to me about a few weeks ago. They said, "You have this test," forgot the name of it, but it does open up a little bit more of Pandora's box, which is like different percentages of what I could potentially get like later on in life, like disease wise. And so we're considering doing that just because I'm getting to that age where, hopefully in the next 10 years I have a family, I have a wife. And so I kind of want to know what I'm getting my future wife into, my future kids into, if there's something that pops up in their future. So just trying to take all the avenues I can to make sure my family's healthy too.
Yeah. And you ended up, after the incident, you ended up with a pacemaker. Like, what is that like for you? What is a pacemaker? What does your pacemaker do for you versus what it might do for somebody else?
So I have a defibrillator is what they actually call it. And so what a defibrillator does is it will track my heart rate basically. So it's always working, but it's not technically pacing me, but it's always watching. So if my heart rate gets too low or too high in any situation, it'll actually shock me back into rhythm, or if I have an arrhythmia. And so basically I have a lead that sits on my sternum, and it's just constantly watching me just in case if anything happens. And so versus a pacemaker, which you usually hear in older people is that is actually running their heart at a certain percentage. I think that's correct. And it's always working, and mine is only working if it's needed to.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting, it's just weird to hear the concept that you have something in your body all the time that is a foreign object. And I know that is I'm sure it's not the most comfortable thing, but I'm sure by now it's just the way you are. It's second nature, and you don't even notice for the most part. But it's interesting to hear that. And so when you talk about the actual incident itself, you're playing basketball, your whole life you haven't noticed anything abnormal. I personally, my first year in college, I got my physical done, and I went into the doctor and I was out like that, typical
Mm-hmm.
physical stuff. And then I think somebody, because I went to my JUCO was in Arizona, and I think it was like an Arizona high school football player had passed away, and they didn't know he had some sort of heart condition. He was out on the football field, and after that they started doing EKGs on me at my physical, no matter where I got it, whether it was in Kansas, where I'm originally from, or in Arizona. And so I think that overall, there's people that are taking it just with how simple it is to prevent somebody that doesn't need to, go through something like that. It's just like, get somebody tested.
Right. It is definitely a very preventable thing. It is very preventable, and that's what the foundation does. And so we do annual heart screenings where we do the EKGs, we do the ultrasounds on the heart if needed. It used to be that we just did it, but we had very low cases to where they needed that happen. And so we kind of got rid of that unless if something came up in the EKG. It's very preventable. Sudden cardiac arrest is by far one of the most preventable things out there in our youth, and it's scary too, because let's touch on this too. Heart disease, we always think of like the couch potatoes or the kids that have like the bad diet and everything. Well, let's talk about hypocardiomyopathy, long QT. I mean, those are structural and electrical portions of the heart that are damaged, and those are the ones that show up mostly within athletic kids and the kids that are most active.
Mm-hmm.
Just to touch on kind of, if you can kind of help everybody understand the difference between sudden cardiac arrest, which is what you went through, and something like a heart attack, and just kind of because there's a lot, I think we were talking off air about this, so we kind of got a better understanding. For a lot of people, sudden cardiac arrest and heart attack might be the same thing in their mind, and it's clearly not, as you have described to us, but for everybody else, just if you could give them an idea of kind of what that looks like and how that happens.
Absolutely. So heart attack is when it's a plumbing issue, and so when you have a plumbing issue, as in like a heart attack, it's the clogged arteries, and so that is more of what you're putting into your body. And so, like the food, what you're drinking is most commonly a heart attack when it is plumbing issues. There's some other cases that's where it is different. And what I mean by electrical, that is the heartbeat, heart rate, what you're doing at all times. Like sitting here right now, like the electricity is running through your heart right now, and that's how your heart is going. And so that's what lung QT is when that electricity just stops in your heart. And so that's the difference, and that's what a cardiac arrest is. And when that electricity just stops, your heart just completely stops. With a heart attack, it doesn't stop.
Yeah. And they don't know. I mean, is there a specific reason why someone would go into cardiac arrest? Like, is it just like they're like I believe you said, you might have touched on it, that you were a little more susceptible to something like that happening.
Yeah. So when they ran the test, they looked at the first two things they looked at were energy drinks and drugs. Those both came back negative. Like I said, I was really healthy kid, fairly healthy kid. But what causes sudden cardiac arrest most of the time is, unless in my case where I'm idiopathic, which means I don't have a diagnosis. So I'm a little bit on the weirder side, as my doctor told me. So HCM, hypocardiomyopathy, ARVD, which are more structural things with the heart. I don't know exactly why those cause it. I just know what the purpose of those are. And they're mostly enlargements of your heart is what they are. And that's what causes it to stop, because if your heart gets too big, or, like long QT, or the electricity just stops. And there's different types of long QT too. I believe there's 3 types, and this long QT type 2 is the one that will just stop randomly. So there's different things. That's a little bit more above my pay grade as a founder of the Heartstrong Foundation to get into, but it's interesting when you actually research it and why it does stop.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to just kind of to hear something from somebody like you that, you did have a susceptibility to something like this happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not everybody that has that. But one thing that everybody does have is a high risk of something going wrong with their heart some point in their life, because
Mm-hmm.
the number one way that anyone in this, I'm not sure if it's the world or just the United States, but the most likely way someone's to die is to have some sort of heart problem, whether it's because of diet or anything else that could accumulate over time like that. So I think that it's just good to be talking about the subject and getting people to know, like, hey, everybody should be conscious of what's going on with their heart and other, just taking care of their body. As I believe personally that our education system hasn't done a great job of educating people on their own health. So I think it's good to just start the conversation. And I think that I don't know exactly how you got into starting your foundation, but I mean, that's definitely a step in the right direction in my eyes.
Yeah, so I'll touch on that too, about how it started. So shortly after the hospital, when I was in there for 5 days, my dad and we had some phone calls from other foundations who they'd actually lost their kids. I mean, I was clinically dead for 8 to 9 minutes. So if the doctors had told me I had less than a 5% chance to live, like, I am a lucky guy. I'm very blessed to be here in good health and nothing wrong too. That's the amazing part about all this. But the families that reached out to me, they had started their own foundations because they had lost their kids, and they didn't want this to happen to any other family. And so when that hit home with me, to where it's like, well, Colin and I played baseball together, and so it's like, Colin's like my brother still to this day after almost 10 years of knowing each other. And so it's like, I don't want to see his family go through that. I don't want to see him go through that, and all my friends in Longview too. Like, that's why we started it, was because I also wanted to give back, but I didn't want to see another family go through that, because it was horrible just looking at my parents and just seeing the pain in their eyes. Like, we don't know if we're going to lose them or not, like, at any given second.
And what are the statistics in terms of people who are susceptible? Like, how often does this happen? How often does it happen to somebody who's in high school per se? Because we hear a lot about news stories and different things where a high school kid collapses. And to your point, and the great thing about your foundation is you're doing screenings to help prevent this. But you're probably more of an expert than the rest of us on what the statistics are, and then how often you actually find something in athletes or anybody that comes in for a heart screening, and what does the process look like for them once you find something? What are the next steps?
So I believe the statistics were a few years ago, where it was 1 in every 3 days there was a kid between the age of 12 and 18 passing away from sudden cardiac arrest, which is 10 times out of 10 it's undetectable. Unfortunately, like, they didn't go to a hard screening. I mean, we don't think about those things as an athlete personally. Like, we think we're invincible because we are so healthy. We play sports. We work out multiple times a day and practice. We don't think about those types of things. And it's so unfortunate that we have a kid 1 in every 3 days passing away from something like this. So that's one of the statistics I found a few years ago. And so you want to know about the process of? Yeah, I was shocked when I found that. You said you want me to touch on how the foundation heart screening works? Is that?
Well, just the process of, say I come in and you guys, I go through the EKG, you find something in the EKG, kind of what does that process look like? The key here is we don't want to scare people. This isn't about like, oh my God, but we just want to be educated and show people the right direction on how to get educated on things like this, and for their kids as well.
Yeah. And like, do you have are you a brick and mortar place where, people come to you, or how do you go about like screening people and being able to screen people that, a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to take time out of their day to go somewhere. So do you go and see these people, or what is the process like for your foundation in trying to help people?
So since 2000, our first screen was in 2013. So 6-7 years into doing the heart screenings, we've always done it at Peace Health in Longview, Washington. And so basically what it looked like was we just set up in their clinic, and then we had kids from all over the community coming, like Longview, Kelso, the coast. It was an amazing turnout. And And so, to your point, they all come to us for the most part. We're trying to switch that up a little bit in the next coming years because we had to cancel this year's heart screening. But for the most part, is what we did was we just set up in the clinic. They come in. I mean, the process, it took anywhere between 12 and 15 minutes. So it was pretty quick, in and out. So you get the EKG, and then I think last year was the first year that we didn't do the echoes. And so usually they go straight from their EKG, and then the cardiologist is on site too. So that was the awesome part about our screenings. We had a cardiologist right there reading your results and giving you your feedback right away. And they go into their echo, and then they would come out. An echo card, it's an ultrasound of the heart, basically. So they're seeing the full structure of the heart. And so the EKG is reading your heartbeat. So that's the difference between the two. And so then they would come out, and then honestly, I think that took the majority of the time. That would take anywhere between 8 to 10 minutes, depending upon how quick the cardiologist came in to see them. Mm-hmm. And so then they come out, and then we did a CPR training, like just real quick, hands-on, hands-only CPR. And then they get a little nutrition fact, like what's best for your heart, like sodium, like things to avoid, like sodium and all that. Then they get their results right there from us. And then on our paper, it said, follow up, and here's what's wrong. And then it was either my dad and I were sitting there ready to talk to them, be like, hey, this is what you need to do. And we gave them the resources right there. And then if nothing was wrong, we gave them their paper and said, all right, we'll see you later. Like, you're good to go. So you get your feedback right there about what you need to do. We give you the resources, whether we'd send them down to Portland to my cardiologist who I've been seeing for the past few years, or, stay in Long Beach, whatever worked best for them.
Yeah. And that's awesome, because like I had touched on a little bit of how my physicals had gone in college, and my last year I actually played at a school where they took every athlete, and we had certain times for each different sport, but we all went to the athletic building, and in each classroom in the athletic building, it was one step of your physical. And they did it like that, where it was like, all right, everybody's here, we're getting it, we're kind of ripping the Band-Aid off, just getting everybody to do it at the same time. And I thought that was great. I thought that it was something where it took a little longer because there was a line, and obviously baseball, you have a lot of guys, but it's just something where it's like, if people aren't doing this, and like, what are the normal college students doing that aren't an athlete necessarily? Like they don't feel any need to get a physical,
Mm-mm. No, yeah, it's crazy. They didn't start doing like EKGs in some colleges, and like I don't know if in the state of Washington if they even do them, unless if you say like your family has heart history and your physical, just like your every 2-year checkup. I mean, I think that's something that should be put into every physical they say every 2 years, just like a physical to get your heart checked up. And I 110% agree with that. And I think that should be part of your physical. I mean, it is literally 60 to 90 seconds out of your day to get that done.
Yeah. 60 to 90 seconds to possibly protect the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And as you pointed out, these things are a lot of times are so preventable if you can catch them before something happens. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage, I've been through now numerous heart studies and getting everything checked out. And I would encourage anybody to get in, like you said, every 2 years, once a year, at least minimum, to just get a general overall checkup, because sometimes things happen and they can develop quickly. And so the sooner you know about that, and the sooner you can kind of get an edge on that, the better off you're going to be. And I've had a great experience going through one of the events that Spencer had worked, and it's exactly how he described. It was something that, you're in and you're out, but you have everything right there. So you know exactly where you're going to go. In the process, you go from room to room, you meet with the cardiologist, they check you out, everything's good or not. But it's so key to have that information. And like for some of the physicals that I took that weren't as elaborate as the one that I took at the University of Portland, I mean, they're more worried about my eyesight than they were about my heart. And I figure if I can hit a baseball, my eyes are probably pretty good. We can just skip that part, and we should probably check out the heart. But that just wasn't something that was required. And at a minimum, I feel like at the college level and at the high school level, EKG should be required from the athletic department. I mean, as a peace of mind for not only themselves, but their athletes and everybody moving forward in the athletic realm. And as we continue to push kids and their bodies farther and farther, the better the education and the more prepared we can be for something like this, the better overall we're going to be.
Being proactive is such a huge part of it too. Like just being aware. I mean, going to get your EKG is great too, but like being prepared, like the night that I went down, I forgot to add this, my coach, Bill Backamus, a nearby parent, Bill Brill, and another one, Mike Stangy, were on me so quick with CPR. They gave me mouth to mouth too until the paramedic showed up. I mean, it's just being proactive and being prepared. And those are the two biggest things I could stress is if you're proactive about making sure you're prepared to save a life, like Coach Backamus, Mr. Brill, and Mr. Sting were that night, and then also making sure that your own heart is good, that is something that could change a community so quick.
Yeah. And well, the way I look at it too is like, you're doing something simple that, not many people, it's not like you've created this new way of being. It's like, hey, this is something that we just need to be looking at. It's not, it's nothing radical, no radical change. But I think that my favorite part of having this podcast is being able to share my story. And I think that my story can inspire people, Colin's can, and yours obviously can as well. And my story inspires me, and yours inspires you. And for me, my biggest turning point that I've talked about a little bit before was I was 2-year JV player of the year in high school. I was as a sophomore and a junior, and it's discouraging when you're a junior on the JV baseball team. It's like, dang, like all the best players, like Michael Jordan said he got cut when he made JV as a freshman. It's like, damn, I made JV as a junior. But I ended up, it was the adversity of that allowed me to walk on at Scottsdale Community College. I did not make the team my first year. And that was just a turning point that inspired pretty much the rest of my life, were those two big setbacks that I had. And I think that, like, I like to think, I studied psychology in college, and I know the mind-body connection is so important. So when I think of it, I think like, what for you, like, where were you kind of headed before this happened, where it's obviously a life-changing incident, but what is the impact? How is your view on life almost changed since before and after?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, like I keep saying, I thought I was invincible, man. Like I was probably in the best shape up to that point I'd ever been in my life, going to my sophomore year of high school, and I thought nothing could take me down. And I'm a religious person, so I think God was like, "Hey, you think you're invincible? Watch this."
Yeah.
And then he struck me down, and I was a cocky kid, man. Like I thought no one could touch me. And then after that, I just never took life for granted. Like it could be taken away from you so quick. And I think that's what a lot of us don't realize, especially in high school, man. Like we think we're going to live until we're 80 or 90 years old. That's not the case. And I wish we all did, but I mean, I almost lost my life at 16. It's just, you can't take life for granted. You can't take things for granted. I almost had everything ripped out, from underneath me. And that was my athletic career. I mean, that was the biggest thing for me at the time too, was my athletic career. But everything, I almost lost everything that night, including my life.
Man, because I look at it, and the way you described it, where you talked about your coaches and the parent, like, they see, it don't matter if you're on their team or another team. It's like you see that, and all of that important stuff, like your athletic career, all that, it goes straight out the window. And you really are able to see what is important in life. And I think that right there, you can see that, like, we are all like just people when it comes down to it. And it's like we're all a community, and it's important to just be there for other people, no matter. So not everybody has that experience where something, potentially terrible could happen to them. And to see, like, you remembering their names and just rattling them off like that, that is an opportunity where those people really stepped up too. And that's an event where it's like, hey, if you're ready, if something terrible, one of my favorite people, Inky Johnson, talks about sudden change. And it's like, it's a normal day for you. It was a completely normal day, and then all of a sudden this happens and people are ready. That's the type of person that I like to think that I would be in a situation like that, where, like, we're doing this podcast right here, something happens over there, I can drop this. It's a privilege to be able to do the things that, like, most of the things that I do on a daily basis. And that's kind of that's what I like to think about a lot of the time. I think that putting things into perspective is one of the best things you can do. And when you're grateful and you look at life through the lens of gratitude, it can change your life and change the life of people around you.
Yeah, just to bounce kind of off that, like, there are times, and I've never been through something quite like what you've been through, Spence, and it's in a different. I've been through things in a different way than maybe not. I wasn't kind of in a near-death situation, but like you were talking about, Lou, the ability to gain perspective, and this goes back to a lot of what we've talked about in the previous couple episodes of this growth mindset and trying to gain perspective from things. And sometimes when kind of things hit the fan and there's struggles, and obviously that comes with life, but a lot of times they don't, like, hit you in the face like they did with you, Spencer. Like, they're a lot more just subtle, like, man, this sucks, this is whatever, like, going through it right now. And this, now I think it's important because this doesn't happen to everybody. So the more people that can take something away from your story and your takeaways as you share them and continue to share them with people, the better, because so many people just like to brush off whatever's going on and they don't take any perspective from it. They don't try to learn anything from their bad experience. And when you're faced in a situation like you were, you're in my opinion, you're forced to learn something. Like, you are put in such an extreme situation that there's no way that you're going to come out of it the same way that you went into it. And so for me, now I didn't go through it, but for me, it's a blessing that you can take that and share your story and run with it, because, like I said, a lot of people just try to throw that stuff to the wayside and just deal with whatever and then just move on from it, and without really taking the time to self-reflect and look into it. So, I appreciate your time coming on here, because, like I said, there's so much to learn from other people and gaining their perspective and their stories. And so it's honestly fun for me to have the opportunity, like you were saying, Lou, to just get into it and hear and talk about these things. And hopefully I can just drop this stuff too, if something really truly happens, and have that kind of perspective, and always looking to gain things in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I think that especially with something like Spencer's story, like, it puts into perspective the way that people live life now, where people spend a lot of their day on their phone and a lot of their day looking at other people instead of kind of just looking at their own life and thinking about how many things that they do have. Because I had a job working at it was an internship so I could graduate with my degree in psychology, where I worked in a group home. And a lot of those kids didn't have any family. They often didn't have any positive adults. To put it in the nicest way, like, not necessarily the nicest, but in the lightest way possible, they didn't have any positive adults around when they were a kid. And that was something where I had a great family growing up. I had a great community growing up. And that's something to be so grateful for. And I grew up in what they call the JoCo bubble, because, like, nothing too bad can happen to you in Johnson County, Kansas. And it's like, it's just something that the way we live life now, it's, you turn on the news or you open up Twitter and you see so much negativity. But when you choose, I mean, I might just make this my slogan, but it's good to visit the social media world. It's good to visit the news, but you don't want to live there. And if you live there, it can be very, very sad. I think we're a little bit ready for some sort of a change in that way as a society, where we don't pay so much attention to our phones and all of that.
I agree 100%. And as we will continue to talk about that, and it's a big thing for us. And I like the way you put it, man. We like to visit there. We don't want to live there. And Spencer, has that sort of thing changed for you? Like, are you more aware of how you spend your time with in regards to media and, like, I mean, we're a few years out, right? We're 7 years out from this incident, but just kind of, are you more aware of that sort of thing?
Definitely of how I spend my time, very much so. I was a family man before it all happened, but I don't know if there's a bigger family man there out there than me right now, or there ever will be. My parents are my rock. There's no question about it. I love my brother to death. Do anything for him, and it's just crazy to think that all in one night that could have been gone. Like, I could have been out of their lives, and vice versa. Like, when we're at the dinner table, like shortly after, I was like on my phone, like I was responding to so many messages and just trying to keep up with all that. But it was shortly after that I was like, I almost lost this. Like, why am I on my phone at the dinner table? Like, I'm having a conversation in the car with my dad. Why am I on my phone? It is good. Like you guys said, it is good to check in every once in a while just to see what's going on in the world. But I think some of us, especially like at a very young age, when we do get like our first iPhone, that we do lose perspective on what is in front of us besides our phone. And that could be our family and friends.
Yeah. And like you said, you're a religious guy. Like, I didn't grow up religious. As I've gotten older, I've definitely become more spiritual. And it doesn't matter to me what God anybody believes in, but I do think that when you can attribute how crazy life is, and like you said, you had a 5% chance to live, like for me, it's hard to believe that there isn't some sort of higher power, where it's like, you just got to be grateful for the things that you don't understand, because like and you even said, like, you thought you're invincible, and God said, hey, watch this. Like, that's exactly what can happen. And I think that when you look at it from the lens of gratitude, you're able to say, like, dang, like, even if something else, even if you would have had a different outcome, you could have had a positive impact. I think everything happens for a reason. And I think that that's just something that you can, because that allows your story to inspire me today. Like, I'm just grateful that you were able to go through that, and you took the outlet of starting a foundation and taking it and growing from the experience, because that's something Colin and I have talked about on our previous podcasts too. Like, my buddy that I played with at Mississippi State just went 14th overall, and I don't think he's listened to the podcast yet, but shout out to Justin Foscue. He is such an anomaly as well, where it's like, not everybody has the tools in the first place to even have a chance to get drafted at all. He just went 14th overall to the Rangers. Like, and he just posted on Instagram. It's like, man, like, I can't even tell you, I can't even start. Like he said, what he actually said was, I would need to write a book to explain to you how I got here. And that's exactly how it is. It's like, if you can actually look into why your success happened, it's because you took all of your previous experiences and you look and you say, okay, how did I get here? And he just looked into it and said, man, a lot of this was out of my hands, but he made the absolute most of it, and he deserves every little bit of what's coming to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it gets back to what I've alluded to in previous podcasts, and the idea of controlling what you can control versus just allowing yourself to let go of thinking you can control what you absolutely cannot control. And I, as I've gotten older, have become also more spiritual, in the sense that I take a very open-minded approach. As you, Lou, it doesn't really matter to me what you believe in, or how you choose to practice that. But to your point, Spence, like there's so many things that are out of our control, and to believe that you're totally in control and totally invincible, and for I would say the vast majority of our listeners who will be hearing this, like at some point in their life, if not right now, they do feel that way, and they do feel like nothing's gonna happen, not them. It's never gonna be them, and it it's not within your control, and that's such a dangerous way to live, in my opinion. And obviously, Spence, you can shed more light on this, probably than I can, but it's a dangerous way to live in that regard, because I mean, what control do we really have over our lives and the things that are going to happen to us? We just don't even know.
I mean, the way I live my life now, especially, is like there's a difference between God's plan and your plan, man. Like I definitely thought when I was 16, like I had my plan, like it was to go play baseball in college. It was to make it as far as I can in baseball. But that wasn't the path for me. Like how upset I was at my senior year, to where it was like, oh, like, I'm not going to go to college. Like I got hurt, ended up going to a small college that I ended up absolutely loving. I grew as a person. And the more and more I thought about, like, when I first went to Eastern Washington University, and then I transferred to Oregon State, I was like, every step of my life has happened for a reason. And it's not my plan. It's God's plan, and the people that he's put in my life, the things that have happened, like the experiences that I've had, even outside of the sudden cardiac arrest, like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to. I think that's really the best way to look at it, to really not drive yourself crazy. Where my one side of my family, before my parents got married, was one religion, and it created a little turmoil. But that's not the point. The point is that one of my aunts once told me to just cast your anxieties on God. And when you're able to actually do that, it's like, why are you worrying so much about the past? Why are you worrying so much about the future? Like, you don't know. Something could happen to me right now where it's like, this is my last day. And I think that when you actually take that approach, whether or not you believe in one God or another, it's like, don't worry so much. Like life, there's so many unanswered questions, and to face some of those more difficult questions is part of the point of life, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, there's no point to that anxiety. Yeah, go ahead.
No, there's not. And the ability to live in the moment, and no matter how people deal with their anxiety and the worry about the future, the worry about the next job, the worry about, who knows what you're going to do tonight. It's literally, it can come down to just the most minuscule things, but to worry about those things, it's easier said than done. I will preface this with that. It's not always easy to be like, I'm just not going to worry about it. It's already taken care of. But as I continue to like look back on my life and how things have kind of played out, again, I've been to 4 different colleges. I've played at 4 different schools. Like, for one reason or another, I was supposed to end up where I ended up. And in the time, like, if you would have told me that, I probably would have just told you to screw off. I don't want to hear it. X, Y, Z. But hindsight to me is always 20/20, and there's a lot to learn from your previous experiences, and the ability to apply that to your state is kind of key, and that serves as the bridge, because you, like I alluded to earlier, you can take these things happen, and you can just choose not to use them and use the tools that you gain from them, or you can kind of choose to apply it to your current situation and understand that maybe it's just not worth worrying about. And if something happens where it's a stepping stone, like that's how my mom growing up to me, like no matter what happened, it was just a stepping stone to my next place, wherever that was supposed to be. And a lot of times I didn't know where I was headed. Like, it was just a stepping stone. The current moment that I was in, or the current, or the near past event that had taken place. Like, it was just a stepping stone, and I was never in control of my plan. And I think that's the best way to put it, is you think you got a plan, and there's there's somebody up there who's got a different plan than most of the time of what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and well, to look at it in that lens, it's a when you think about life in general, I think that in psychology, I don't think I've mentioned this before, but basically the point of having a memory is so that you can learn from that experience. Like, as a human being, we're obviously the top of the food chain. We have the I don't know if we have the largest brain, but I think we do. I mean, that's not my department necessarily. But the point is, that's why you have a memory. Like, you have it so you can remember something and you can learn from it, and so you don't make the same mistake twice. Or so when you have a positive experience, you can actually move on from it. And I think that that's where social anxiety, that's the biggest problem with that, in my opinion, where people will be scared to go hang out with others because of their past negative experiences. And a lot of people can't really have a conversation about why they have social anxiety. Because I was a kid that I had close friends when I was a kid, but I didn't have a lot of friends. And so for me, I was able to look at it and say, okay, well, I don't really like going out to like these parties. I don't invite myself to these parties. I don't interject and get myself invited to things. And that's something that, like, I could chalk up as a regret, but I actually just look at it as, hey, this is how I was. And there's no point in me looking back and say, man, I missed a lot of parties where I probably could have, had had a chance to meet a girl and earlier on in my life that I could have, gone out on a date with, or had more friends or something like that. But part of that just made me who I am. And it made me the guy who put his head down and went to work at baseball practice. And I think that I've gotten over so many of my social anxiety things, and it comes with age for sure, but it also comes with just being grateful for your past and understanding that there's nothing you can do about it now. How are you going to use your memory, and how are you going to use your past experiences to propel yourself forward in life? Because it's very easy for people to get complacent, and being complacent is now easier than ever. We live in a world where you can literally sit on your couch or on your bed all day long and watch countless TV shows, countless documentaries. It's the safest time to be alive ever. And people are now, like, the problems that they're accruing are revolving around their own mind. People aren't comfortable in their own mind when they're at home. And that's what quarantine has really showed us, where people are at home and they don't know what to do with themselves. It's like, well, you have an opportunity in front of you to be a positive impact on your community one way or another every single day. And that's just what I'm trying. That's one way I think that this podcast has helped me. I don't care how many people watch this, because if it inspires one person, I'm moving in the right direction.
And I think you alluded to something that I think is interesting, and I want to flip it onto Spencer. Do you carry is there any negative feelings or emotions that you carry forward, or have you just been able to use this experience that happened to you, and it just propel you in such a or such a positive way that you kind of just moved on, and you're just kind of living your life, and then you're able to apply your knowledge and your tools and your foundation to help other people? And is that what your mentality is now, or where are you at with your current kind of approach?
So when I first started out, it was always kind of like it was negative. It was like very, why me? Like I think a lot of that had to be like maturity wise, where I sat there, like, I mean, I'd just be sitting there, like, even by myself or like friends, and just pop into my mind, be like, why me? Why did this have to happen to me out of all the people in the world? So it was very negative at first. Definitely dealt with like the anxiety of it happening. Like, I mean, almost every day, like, I had to go through the gym, like, to get to like one of my classes. I mean, that's what I had, weight training, so that's where it was. I had to go. I had to go into the gym to get to the weight training room and just sit there. I mean, I walked by the spot every single day, so it was very hard at first. I think a lot of that had to do with maturity wise, but now it's very positive. Like, I mean, there's still days where like I have my struggles with it. I mean, that's just I think there's things I'm still working on, like to close that part up and really fully put it into like 100% positive light to others and to myself. The foundation definitely helped out with that, putting into a positive light for me, towards like I took something that could have been it just would have been tragic. I mean, any person that dies, it's tragic, and I put it into a positive light for my community. And that's something that like I really, really am proud of myself for. I'm really proud of my foundation board. Like, shout out to them. I have an amazing group of people around me. You know, my dad has done such a great job mentoring me through this too. My mom's amazing too at spreading the word. She does some of our marketing too, so she's just amazing. Her and I do the marketing. Just got a lot of great people around me that got me through this. And they still work with me too on it.
And I'm sure it's a battle every day still. I mean, it's not easy for anybody to get up out of bed every single day at a certain time and say, hey, I'm going out and I'm doing something that is not easy. Not everybody could do it. Not everybody is especially willing to do it, because especially something like that, where it's like, you're not in it for the money. You're in it so you can actually have a positive impact. And I think that is such a noble and an effective way of being. It's going to create meaning in your life for years to come, where it's like, hey, I'm deciding to do this. Like, this is because I'm sure, like you said, it's like you're trying to do your best to put it in 100% positive light. That's just not the way life is. You can't always be 100% positive. There's ups and downs every single day. And you have to go about it that way. And that's what inspires me about your story. It's like that I can see myself in your shoes. Like, if my life would have changed at 16 and I wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that I would have loved to do, like, who would I be today? I hope that I would have some of the same underlying foundation that I have now, that I learned was that my route was obviously through baseball. I mean, it was every single day. No way I wanted to get up and run or do lunges with 45-pound weights across a basketball court, where you got to touch your knee on the hard basketball court. Like, God, it is brutal. But like, you learn something from that, and in the moment you're like, oh, this is horrible. I want to be a normal college student that just gets to go up and go to class every day. And you just look at other people, and it's very easy to say, man, I wish I did that, or if I could just do this, or if I could just do that. It's easy to get in that mindset, and it's a grind every day for every single person, no matter what you see on their social media, or no matter what you hear from them on a daily basis, especially if you don't know them like that. So that's so inspiring to me.
And it says a lot about you as well, in your ability to take action once this happened. Like, you weren't one to just sit there and just like wallow in the negativity. And obviously there's a coping period, and I mean, you're 100% entitled to whatever that period looks like for you. You know what
just
I mean?
A little bit.
But yeah, whatever it is. And it's just something light, you know, when you go through something like that. I don't know. But no, it truly is like there's that coping period you need to go through, so you can help make sense of what is going on, what has happened, where do I go from here, that whole conversation. But your ability to take what happened and create it, and do something from
and carry
it,
the load.
and exactly, and have that just action oriented mindset, and turning this potentially, I mean, catastrophic event into something super positive where you can impact other people's lives. It just says a lot about who you are as a person, and the way you're going about it. And I applaud you for that, because it truly is. It's truly amazing. And obviously you've helped kids. You've found people who are more susceptible to these things. And as you said earlier, 1 in 3 kids or 1 in 3 days. Oh, geez. A person dies once every 3 days from the ages of 12 to 18 from sudden cardiac arrest. And that's not something I knew about before you went through this. I didn't have any idea, and nobody's having that conversation. And it's important to do so, because obviously there's a lot of lives being affected, not only the people who are going through it, but their families, their friends, the people who they know. And spreading awareness is so important. So I applaud you for all of the work that you've been able to do.
Yeah,
I appreciate that, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on, allowing me to share my story, the kind words. It means a lot. It's truly a blessing to be in the position I am to just try and influence people and spread the word and advocate for this. I mean, this is such a huge deal in our society nowadays, whether just anything like health struggles are just a huge thing in general. Like, this is a very small piece of the puzzle. I mean, just being proactive and knowing how to save a life and being ready and just being prepared. It's huge in any given situation.
Yeah. And to go off of that, it's like spreading awareness. Like, what is spreading awareness? Spreading awareness is not just saying, hey, once every 3 days someone dies from this. It's like, oh, okay, I hear you. It's actually being able to say, hey, I see myself in Spencer. I see myself in Colin. Like, that's something that could happen. And to be actually aware is not just hearing what somebody says. It's being able to put yourself in their shoes and say, hey, that could have just as easily been me. Like, it's a small percentage chance that it was you. And hey, it was you, But I think that that's so important to have someone like you on a podcast where you can have the long form discussion and say, hey, this is actually what it's like. This isn't just a cause. It's like, it's something that could happen. And it's not necessarily just this one thing. There's so many causes out there that people hear about every day and take no action in their own personal life. So I'm very glad we had the opportunity to speak. And I just thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I have one final question for you, Spencer. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self, or anybody else, but specifically your 16-year-old self? What advice would you give them now after going and for the next 7 years to where you are now? What would you tell yourself before this happened?
Don't take anything for granted. Thank God every day you wake up. Life could be taken from you in a heartbeat, literally. But that's the best advice I could give. It's just so tough to just sit here and just think, like, 7 years ago, did I think I was going to be dead on a basketball court, like clinically dead on a basketball court? No, like, I think I woke up every day with the attitude of like, yeah, this, like, I deserve this. I don't deserve anything. Like, I have to go out and work for it. Nothing in my life is ever taken for granted now.
Yeah, here's a list of things that you're entitled to. Nothing.
Man, we should get some shirts made, dude. Entitled to nothing.
Yeah,
that's the next step, maybe. Entitled to nothing. It truly is, and it's a dangerous way to live, like I said earlier, because it's so easy to get caught up in it and just think that this life that we live right now today is going to be the same tomorrow, and we feel like it's just gonna be the same forever. And the quicker you realize again that you're not in control of that, and it's not going to stay the same forever. It's not. And the quicker you can realize that, I think the wiser you're going to be in the moment, the better approach you're going to take on a day-to-day basis, and just a better overall person you're going to be, because you realize that thing can be taken from you, in an instant. And Spencer, if you want to fill the people in just on your website, how they can access more information, kind of give them all the basics.
Yeah, so our website is stopyouthsca.org. Basically, if we have an event going on, we're on Facebook too, and Spencer's Heartstrong Foundation. We're very active on Facebook. That's really our only social media platform. We don't use Instagram or Twitter right now. But basically, we're up to speed on, stories like if there is a family that goes down, if you've gone through a sudden cardiac arrest or need advice or something like that, reach out through the Facebook page or send an email through the website. I mean, I do a lot of patient advocate work too. I'm always here as a resource. If you're going through the same thing, something similar, like, reach out. Don't be afraid to contact me. I'm a resource. And that's part of the foundation is I am here for you. Hopefully we'll have a heart screening this year, depending upon if we can kind of get the flow of how it's going to look like, because we're going to try and renovate that a little bit. But yeah, hopefully we'll do some more events and everything once COVID finally chills out.
And you guys have a group too, right? Of people who have been through this. So you guys have kind of connected people who have been through similar experiences, right?
Yeah, I got like a little heart fam is what I call them. And so you get added into that group message. We're very, very open group. We don't push anything. We don't want to force anything out of you. Very comfortable of what you want to share. I'm very open about what I'm willing to share with the group. I'm here as a resource. That's basically all I could say is I'm a resource. If you ever need anything, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. I think our goal on a different podcast is to grow as individuals between Colin and I, and to add perspective to our lives and other people's lives. And I'm glad to have added your perspective to my life. So as we wrap up, I just think that's kind of our goal here, and I'm just glad that we were able to add your perspective on a different podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you're still watching, and if you like what we just talked about, be sure to like and subscribe to our page, and we'll have the link to Spencer's website and the Facebook up on the description. So if you want to check that out as well, and reach out to Spencer. If you guys have any questions for any of the three of us, make sure to reach out, drop a comment or something. We're more than happy to talk about absolutely anything, and we're open to have a dialogue. So if you want to have that dialogue, be sure to hit us up. And we want to say thank you, Spencer. And again, it's Spencer's Heartstrong Foundation if you're trying to find it on Facebook or Google. And we appreciate your time, man. Thanks for coming on and hanging out with us. And it's been a different podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cheers, boys.